Hello Stampers! Today I'm going to show you how to make this project where you're coloring on acetate, layering it on top of glimmer paper, and coloring the acetate before you adhere them together. Just look how pretty and sparkly this is. It's an easy project, but you will need some special supplies to complete it. So these are the supplies that you're going to need. You're going to need some markers, ink to stamp your image, the acetate to stamp on, the glimmer paper to show through, and a detail stamp. Now, the detail stamp I chose for this project is this beautiful ornament from the beautiful Baubles set. Any detail stamp will work. The concept of this card is very simple. You're going to stamp on the acetate and then overlay it over glimmer paper, and the glimmer paper will show through. Now, the key is to pick something like this pretty ornament where you can do some coloring, but you're also going to have some white spaces that will be able to show through. All right, so one thing to pay attention to is solubility issues. Because you're going to be stamping on acetate, you have to stamp your image with Stazon, which is a permanent ink. You also have to color with alcohol markers. These are Stampin' Stampin' Blends. Any alcohol marker will work for this project, but the key is that it has to be alcohol inks. Now, the other issue with solubility is that you don't want these two inks to interact. Ordinarily, I wouldn't use them together. If I was working on glossy paper or regular paper, I would use a different ink to stamp my base. I'd use Memento ink. But because this is a clear medium that you're working on, you're going to stamp the image on one side and turn it over and do your coloring on the other side. And I'll remind you of that issue later on when we get to that point in the video. Stampin' Up! Sells lots of different kinds of glimmer paper, so this sort of a card can be done really easily. You can make so many different kinds of cards because Stampin' Up! Sells lots of different colors of glimmer paper. I actually had made it with the silver, and it looks really pretty with the silver as well, and I'll show you that at the end. All right, so here's my piece stamped, and I just want to point out one thing on here. You're going to see this little sticker that I have. Remember I said that it was really important that whatever side you stamp on, that you have to color on the other side, and my brain can't always remember when I have a piece of paper like this, especially with a symmetrical image, which side I've stamped on. So that just marks for me that this is the side I stamped and this is the side I'm going to color. I like to see a white piece of paper, a plain white piece of paper underneath. It lets me see my image a little bit better rather than stamping on that grid. So let me get my coloring started. So there's our finished project. Very quick and easy to color. Stampin' Up! Sells lots of different kinds of markers, and I'm pulling out the catalog right here just to show you in the page that shows the coloring tools. Here's our regular markers. These are water-based, and by the way, we also have watercolor pencils and lots of other things that you can use to do coloring effects. But I turned the page, one page in the catalog, and here's the whole page with the Stampin' Blends. So there's a whole variety of colors that you can choose from, and I really love working with product from one company. That way you know that all your colors, at least for your colors, for your inks and your ribbons and your papers, you want to work with one company just to make sure that all of your things match. Now, one of the things that I really like about Stampin' Up! Is the fact that they support so many of their stamp sets with matching dies, and there is a matching or a coordinating die that goes with this stamp set, but it does not have a die in it to cut out the big ornament. It's got a little die here that would cut out this stamp. It's got a coordinating die here. This is a coordinating die. It cuts a smaller piece than the actual ornament, but that's not a problem for this particular project because it's just a circle, so it's easy to cut out. Stampin' Up! Also makes a set of layering circles dies, and I'm going to choose one of them from here to cut out the glimmer paper piece to put behind my ornament. I'm going to pass along one more tip. I'm getting ready to cut out my circle. I'm going to choose to cut it actually from the back side of the paper instead of the front. There's so many little pieces of the glitter on here that sometimes that die edge has a little trouble going through. If you've ever had any trouble cutting glimmer paper and you're cutting from the front, try just putting your die over on the back of the paper, and that way it cuts through the plastic on the back first before it goes through all those little glitter pieces. It won't work for a die that like a word die, something where it makes a difference whether the image is reversed, but for a circle it's really easy. All right, so here's our circle, And look how beautiful that is when it's layered on top of here. Isn't that just gorgeous? All right, I'm getting ready to stamp the string and the bow for my card. And as I mount them on my block here, I just thought one more thing I need to share with you. Technically, you're not supposed to be using Stazon ink as your go-to ink for photopolymer stamps. You should be using Memento ink most of the time. It doesn't hurt to use Stazon ink once in a while, but because it is a permanent ink, you are going to permanently stain your stamps. Here's my string, hasn't been used yet, so it doesn't have any ink on it. But I always say, if you have a stamp that's absolutely clean and beautiful, it just means it hasn't been loved. It needs to see some ink. All right, so I'm stamping with the Memento ink this time because I'm going to save my stamps and not have these stained. And I'm going to stamp this bow up a little bit because otherwise, if I stamp it too low to the bottom, it'll be hidden behind that top of the ornament. This is the joy of photopolymer stamps, is the fact that you can see through them. All right, I've decided to make this one a thank you card. So I'm inking up a sentiment. So here's another tip when working with acetate. Not only is the solubility of the inks an issue, but adhesives are also an issue. Transparent paper, any adhesive you put on the back of it to adhere it to the glimmer paper is going to show through. It's also hard to adhere things to the front of glimmer paper, but I found that glue dots are a great adhesive to use on the front side of the glimmer paper, and they're small and they're transparent, and so they're an easy thing to use to attach this acetate to the glimmer paper. And to do that, I just use my some sort of pokey tool and lay them strategically in places where there is coloring, not on any of the clear area. All right, I don't know how well you can see the glue dots on there. If I turn it just right, you can see I've got, I don't know, 8 or 9 of them on here. And when I turn this over and position it on top of the glimmer paper, there's going to be, you won't see them at all because there's so much distraction from the reflection of all those little individual reflective pieces on the glimmer paper that you're going to not notice that at all. All right, as we get ready for the final assembly here, you might notice that I cut down this piece to only 3 inches wide because I changed my mind on what the layout of this final project is going to be. I decided that I wanted a thin strip of green on this side and room enough on this side to put a glimmer paper strip and then add a little bit of twine for some embellishment. There you are. The project is almost finished. Just one little more thing to make it pop. I'm going to add a few rhinestones right in here. These rhinestones are a quick and easy way to add some real sparkle to your projects, and if you don't have some in your stamping room, you definitely need some. I will put a link at the end of this video to all of the product that was used on this project, and I will make sure that the rhinestones are included in the list. Now just look at that card pop. Now, I promised I would show you another card made with a silver glimmer paper backing instead. So here's the one made with the silver glimmer paper. And this one uses some of the other dies from that coordinating die set. Isn't that just beautiful how those colors pop when they're against a glimmer paper background like that? Now, not quite the same concept as this video, but here's one more project. This one doesn't use the same concept of coloring on the acetate, but it does use the coordinating product. This surface piece was cut with the die, and then it's just backed with a glimmer paper circle. Isn't this beautiful? Look at the variety of things that you can do with this coordinating set. Time for you to go play, and at the bottom you'll find links to all the products that were used in this video. Thanks for stopping by.